Like Zane Durant, Penn State needs Dani Dennis-Sutton to come back for the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and just like Zane Durant, Penn State needs Dani Dennis-Sutton to come back for the 2025 season if that defense wants to be top 10 caliber. Again, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Be a part of the discussion. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. We're also going to talk about a couple of those transfer portal pickups for Penn State. Owen Wafle from Michigan, and TJ Shanahan from Texas A&M, and why both of those moves are a big deal. But starting with Dani Dennis-Sutton, it is a little bit self-explanatory here, but this Dani Dennis-Sutton, like Zane Durant, can be the face of your defense. These would be multi-year starters. And both of them are in the same conversation because they have these kinds of impact together. Zane Durant, respectively, at defensive tackle, Dani Dennis-Sutton at that strong side defensive end. But with Abdul Carter going on to the NFL, he declared for the draft, you really want to do everything in your power as Penn State to try to retain Dani Dennis-Sutton because his best days of football are only ahead of him. We saw him start to tap into that potential. And that's why this decision isn't as easy as it was maybe back in the middle of the season. That, okay, the understanding is Dani Dennis-Sutton should come back. It's most likely that he will, but this decision gets a lot more difficult now that he started to tap into that potential, especially when the stakes were at the highest. Against SMU, against Boise State, against Notre Dame. I know that game was a loss, but Dani Dennis-Sutton made his impact felt. Dennis-Sutton's potential is not only all conference, but honestly, all America consideration as well. I look at Dennis-Sutton returning for a hypothetical senior season as a first team Big Ten all conference player. And then potentially, if things work out as well as they should, possibly in that All-America discussion. I'm not going to go sit here and declare that he's first team, just like Abdul Carter, but he certainly should be someone that's in the mix to make an All-America team if he has that type of impact that we saw. Based on the way that he played in the postseason, that was All-America type of production. He's potentially a captain, and like I mentioned with Zane Durant, you get that consistency, you get that continuity. He will be a fourth-year veteran, a multi-year starter, someone that's familiar with Penn State football, the program, Tom Allen's defense going into his second season. And it also allows the inexperienced depth to continue to develop. You don't have to throw them into action. You don't have to thrust them in. You don't have to just immediately put them out there when they might not be ready yet. Jalen Harvey, Max Granville, and don't forget about Malachi Williams. As talented as those guys are, who knows if they're going to be ready at the start of the fall season to make that true impact as a starter. I'd like to see them more as rotational players still, and I think the sky is the limit for a player like Max Granville, and James Franklin has spoken highly of Jalen Harvey and Malachi Williams, where they are with their development. But if we're being honest, I would prefer Dani Dennis-Sutton as that starter at defensive end for coming back for his senior season than a Max Granville going into, well, what should be his freshman season, but he came in as a high school, right? He came in as a high school senior. He's going to be a true sophomore, but I think that's putting too many expectations there on Granville. So it just allows for the depth to gain some more experience before they really have that responsibility put on them. Will it happen? Will Dani Dennis-Sutton actually return? Now, I've heard that he's leaning towards a return, that he's always been leaning towards a player that wants to come back. There's unfinished business here now, and that, you can really capitalize on what you did going into your senior season. So somebody that has definitely improved his draft stock, definitely. Because of that recent film from the postseason, I imagine that he is rocketing up draft boards. So somebody that was probably viewed with all the potential in the world, he's 6'6", 260 pounds. This guy is somebody you take a flyer on in the fourth or fifth round, and hopefully he can sit, learn, and develop for your NFL team. Maybe he becomes a third round. Who knows? I don't know what general managers and scouts are thinking. I view Dani Dennis-Sutton as a player that you can take in the second round, third round today. But tomorrow, meaning 2026, the first round is definitely on the table. Of course, from the benefit of Penn State, the pitch is going to be kind of just like Zane Durant, Tyler Warren, and previously Jahan Dotson. A player that, okay, maybe you're a day 2 pick, maybe you're a day, and you really don't, you want to avoid a day 3 selection. Why not come back, help us win a national title, or try, because that's definitely on the table too. This is a national title contending team. You have Zane Durant back. And if you can get Dani Dennis-Sutton, that's one of the key pieces here to do the same thing again, to run it back in 2025. Earn yourself some more money. You have NIL, and that's not what I'm talking about. Earn yourself some more money in the NFL by playing your way into a surefire first-round pick, a guaranteed first-round spot, possibly being one of the first defensive ends taken in the 2026 NFL draft rather than being down the draft board in 2025. That's the pitch that Penn State and James Franklin are going to make, and you did get Zane Durant back. Another starter, an all-conference. I think he's a first-team all-Big Ten conference type of player, maybe All-America. You know, why I hesitate on that is not because Zane Durant isn't capable of it, but because he doesn't get the recognition that he should. He takes on a lot of double teams and doesn't rack up the stats like everybody else. Possibly a defensive captain as well. I think that's, I legitimately think Durant and Dennis-Sutton have that capability to be these faces of the defense. You need them both. Abdul Carter gave you that superstar ability. He's going to be a top 5 pick, and that is a big loss. But now you have that 1-2 punch on that side of the defensive line. If you get Dennis-Sutton back, I can't say it's a guarantee that he's going to return. It seems like the signs are pointing that way, but this decision becomes a lot more difficult because he started to tap into that potential, as I mentioned, when it really mattered most against better competition as well. It's one thing to do it against Purdue and Maryland. It's another thing to do it against SMU, Boise State, and Notre Dame in a playoff setting when it's win or go home. And Dani Dennis-Sutton flashed that superstar. I'm not trying to use that term lightly. Zane Durant and Dani Dennis-Sutton, like Abdul Carter. Am I arguing that these guys are perennial top 5 picks like Abdul Carter? No. But what I am saying, hey, Dani Dennis-Sutton has all the athleticism to put himself potentially. He just needs to show the workload for it. He needs to be able to back it up with the production. He would be that premier pass rusher that Abdul Carter was. That responsibility would be put on him. And he's versatile. He can line up on either side of the line of scrimmage. So we will see ultimately what the decision is, but hopefully for Penn State's sake, if they want to be another clear-cut 2025, not just a fringe playoff team, a national title contender. Penn State was a national title contender in the 24, start of the 25 season, but for 25-26, Dani Dennis-Sutton is that player that can push Penn State back into that echelon if they want to be taken seriously as a powerhouse team in the nation for the 25 and the 26 playoffs. Well, Penn State made some moves on the defensive line as well. Outside of what they do with Dani Dennis-Sutton in his decision, Owen Wafle, former Michigan defensive tackle, commits to Penn State. This is a good get, a solid get, and I'll tell you why it's more important than meets the eye. That's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes used to be dealing with piles and piles of paperwork, frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now, taxes is easily uploading your forms to TurboTax so that you can work with a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get money back guaranteed. You get the most money back guaranteed. And while you go about your day, no stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Penn State picks up another transfer portal commitment. We'll talk about Owen Wafle and then TJ Shanahan, his offensive line counterpart, in the upcoming segment as well. Owen Wafle, let's be transparent about this. Owen Wafle is not an immediate impact type of player. This is someone who is going to develop. This is somebody that is brought in to create depth and create competition. I'm not saying he can't play or he won't play, but to say that he is an instant impact player, that he's going to be a starter, no. Zane Durant and Alonzo Ford are going to be the projected starters, but there are a lot of open spots for Penn State right now on the defensive line depth chart, not only at defensive end, but defensive tackle as well. Now, Wafle, out of high school, was a solid player. 24/7 Sports had him as a 4-star. He was a top 500 player and top 50 defensive lineman in the country, and a top 10 player in the state of New Jersey. Now, that's nothing to bat an eye at here, but I know there are elite prospects out there that come out of high school that everyone garners a lot of attention. But he did commit to Notre Dame once upon a time. So we talk about star ratings here. If Notre Dame and Michigan want these kinds of players, then they are talented football players. 6'2", 300 pounds. Wafle's going to give you size. He's a space eater. He's a run defender type. He'll draw double teams. I wouldn't describe him as a 3-down defensive lineman. I think he's first and second down, and then he'll come off in obvious pass rushing situations. But like I said, presently, he's a depth piece. He's meant to develop, add competition, and with a good spring football, he could earn the reps. Absolutely, he could earn the reps as a backup. He's already physically developed. So for Penn State, they can focus on the technique and the football ability. Thank you, Michigan. That's half the battle, right? Half the battle is getting prospects, particularly on defensive line, offensive line, and tight end, to add the size, the weight, the muscle so that they can play college football. That is half the battle, and he developed at least physically in his 1 year in his first season at Michigan. So he has redshirted, and he's got 4 years of playing eligibility left. But I'll tell you why this move, Penn State's playing the long game here. This isn't just about getting some defensive line depth now. No, there are long-term goals with this move too. Owen Wafle is the older brother of Luke Wafle, class of 2026, and one of Penn State's top defensive line targets for that recruiting class. Rivals has him as a top 70 player in the nation, number 5 defensive lineman overall, and the number one player in New Jersey. He's a consensus 4-star. 6'4", 225-pound edge rusher, so he projects more as a defensive end, unlike his older brother. So Owen is a defensive tackle, clearly 300 pounds. And his younger brother, 225 pounds. But that's what Penn State is trying to do here. There's that family connection, and it doesn't always work out that way. Brothers will oftentimes pick, maybe not necessarily often, but it's not always a guarantee. Just because brother plays at one place doesn't mean that that younger brother is going to follow them to that destination. But Penn State is already at least a projected favorite. On 3, you can't guarantee anything right now, but On 3 says that Penn State is the most likely of the schools to land him, and certainly Owen Wafle being at Penn State certainly factors into that for Luke Wafle in the class of 2026. Bill Belichick just made a visit to New Jersey to recruit Luke Wafle. So down in North Carolina, you can see the kind of prospect and the attention that he is garnering. Let's talk about the defensive line outlook overall. I like what Deion Barnes is doing a lot. Losing Abdul Carter is a loss that you just can't fix overnight, and that's why it is so important to get Zane Durant back, to get Dani Dennis-Sutton. But you're adding players with high upside, like an Anai White. Anai White definitely has an opportunity to contend for playing time right away, and I'd argue, honestly, being a starter at that other defensive end spot. So Dani Dennis-Sutton potentially moves to that Abdul Carter rule, rushing the passer from the left tackle spot from that weak side. Even though I wouldn't call him a weak side defensive end, that is what the position is listed at. Just doesn't fit Dani Dennis-Sutton with how strong he is. But we saw in the Notre Dame game that he played over there, and Abdul Carter, because of the weak shoulder, the weak arm, needed to put some more pressure and avoid that sore spot. So Dani Dennis-Sutton can play that side, and then Anai White comes in and most likely going to be your starter as that strong side defensive end there, but tons of potential. That was a former top prospect in the state of Pennsylvania. I can't say that he has the same trajectory as a Chop Robinson, but that's what this reminds me of. You go to the school that, hey, they won the recruiting battle once upon a time, but didn't exactly work out. You come back, you commit to Penn State, and then things start to work out. Anai White certainly has a lot of potential, physically developed already, so Penn State can focus on technique, football IQ, X's and O's, and getting him prepared that way. But as I've already mentioned, Max Granville, Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams at defensive end. Penn State has a lot of up-and-coming players that aren't going to be ready necessarily today. Now, I am pretty high on Max Granville. Max Granville has developed physically. He's 6'3", give or take 6'3", 6'4", added on the weight, 250 pounds. This is somebody that was supposed to be a high school senior this past season. So now getting that second year of college football, going through a winter workout session, spring football, Granville can position himself to be a player that is factored into the defensive depth chart, not just be a key rotational piece. Maybe he does contend for a starting spot next to Anai White if all things go well. I think Jalen Harvey and Malachi Williams are still a little bit further away, but are progressing at least for the most part. Then at defensive tackle, Zane Durant's already back in the fold, guarantee, while waiting on DDS. Alonzo Ford is supposed to come back from injury. Now, I would be surprised if he plays in the spring football season. It's a long-term injury as it's been described to us, but that is a great starting tandem. Alonzo Ford as that co-starter, if you will, because you can only start so many defensive tackles with Devontae Thomas and Durant as those two starters. But Ford increased his playing time progressively and had impact along the way. He was making plays. He was grading out well with the analytics per Pro Football Focus. So then you have those two as your starters, and you add in Wafle and Xavier Gilliam and Ty Blanding. I think are closer to playing time next fall. They didn't really get in this season because you had Ford, Jay Thomas, Zane Durant, but give them another year of experience. They're only going to get better. They have the size. They have the capability. Penn State said they were close, but not quite in a postseason setting. And I think Liam Andrews is a wild card. We haven't heard much about him, but maybe with the spring football season, now that he has his red shirt under his belt, this is a player that I think Penn State fans probably have forgotten about this point. Was one of the higher rated players in this past class. Could be another guy that factors in with a solid season of spring football. Of course, not a lot of questions asked about him, so hopefully he's not injured or recovering from anything. That is purely speculation. I have no inside reports or anything like that, but Liam Andrews was somebody that did not play this season, and we'll see hopefully that with a good season of spring football can be factored into the depth chart as well. And I think he has a lot of potential too. Could play in the fall and be a key rotational guy himself. Over on the offensive line, so I commend Deion Barnes for his efforts. Phil Troutwine, I don't think there's any, but there are not many other position coaches across the country that are doing better than him right now with building out position groups. TJ Shanahan comes in, and this is a guy that honestly really could contend for starting reps. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games have been an incredible experience that bring fans together like never before, and Game Time can help you do just that with one final one, the national championship game of this 12-team bracket, Notre Dame and Ohio State. You can find tickets to that on Game Time through the Game Time app or at gametime.co. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, and that makes getting tickets for these kinds of events even easier than before. And not only just sporting events, but concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And Game Time Picks, what does it do? It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. You can use Game Time Picks and you'll browse through the deals like it's a breeze. You'll find great value on all kinds of seats around the given venue. And then there's the super deal. That will give you the best value for any event. You can see the seat views before buying, and the app will show you the total cost up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. TJ Shanahan, massive get, literally and figuratively, for Penn State here. Former Texas A&M offensive guard. and he was a former 5-star prospect. So Penn State just casually gets a former 5-star prospect, somebody with SEC starting experience. So this was the number one offensive lineman out of the state of Texas per Rivals, former 5-star, consensus 4-star by 24/7 on 3 and ESPN. But he appeared in 10 games for the Aggies this season, 5 starts. So he's used 1 year of eligibility, but you're getting a 5-star potential caliber player with 3 years of eligibility remaining, with everything that you already have at offensive line. Penn State's only losing 1 starter guaranteed in Sal Wormley. Now, Drew Shelton, Nolan Rucci, Nick Dawkins could certainly make, Vanga Ioane could certainly make the decision to go off to the NFL, but we'll see. I'm not anticipating that a lot of those guys do make the jump, but they could. Let's just say that. He is massive. 6'4", 330 pounds, that TJ Shanahan. And why I say he very well might contend to be a starter is just because I can't look at this player. I can't look at him as a prospect with the potential. How do you get a commitment from this dude and just say that you're a developmental piece? It's really a disservice to what TJ Shanahan is. I compare him to Vanga Ioane because of that, yes, massive build, but the athleticism for somebody his size, that he can run and can move the way that he does as a guard. As far as the offensive line goes, I started to get into it, but Shanahan makes this decision to come to Penn State to play for Phil Trautwein because you see in real time, Nolan Rucci at Wisconsin didn't exactly work out, and Penn State fixes everything. Change in environment, change in coaching, change in development. Whatever wasn't working for TJ Shanahan at Texas A&M, they're going to figure it out at Penn State. I look at this position group arguably set up for the most success in the immediate future for Penn State. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Sal Wormley is going to move on, so that's a starter. Cooper Cousins, you project him to move into that starting spot, but that's my point. You expect Vanga Ioane, Drew Shelton, Nolan Rucci, and Nick Dawkins to all come back, so you have 4 out of the 5 starters. If one of them happens to leave, okay, but Cousins, JB Nelson. Honestly, don't forget about a guy like Egan Boyer who did see time this season. Javen Williams was once upon a time one of the top offensive linemen in the entire country. Could play tackle, could play guard. Guys, really, you do have to factor in this. After some spring ball competition, some guys might go portaling, but this group, it's almost too deep for its own good at this point, and that is a testament to Phil Trautwein and the heater that he is on with not only offensive line recruiting, but development. You're seeing what Juice Scruggs has done in the NFL. You're seeing what an Olu Fashanu has done in his rookie season. And then in the present, not speaking about the future, in the present, Nolan Rucci, who was a former 5-star, went to Wisconsin, didn't have the best results. I know that TJ Shanahan was a starter at Texas A&M for about half the season, but clearly did not like what was working there. So decided to make a move, and he thought Penn State was going to suit him best. There truly are not, it's not only Phil Trautwein with respect at Penn State, but I mean across the board, in the entirety of the country, for all of the position group coaches, there are not many better right now than Phil Trautwein objectively with the results that he is bringing in. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the discussion. If you are new to the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Please also leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. And for more conversations around not only Penn State football, Penn State basketball, Penn State wrestling, your favorite Penn State sports teams, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.